I love great conversations. Hi, my name is Angel Jones. Thank you for joining me on 12-Minute Convos, where I help you create a brand of your own unique, real self. Listen in as I have conversations with amazing people from all over the world. Good night, Casey Bernard. How are you going on this wonderful, beautiful night?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be talking to you.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure to connect with you as well, Casey. So tell me, which of your talents do you believe up to this time is responsible for us connecting?
Well, I am a co-host of a podcast called VeryPink Knits and a podcast producer. And I think that's how you found me, probably really through my marketing background that happened before my new career pivot into podcasting. But right now the focus is podcasting.
Yeah, most definitely. You all have an amazing podcast. So you produce the podcast as well. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm learning the ropes. I'm actually in a podcast production course right now to make the sound more professional sounding.
Wow, you guys sound so amazing. All right. So who did you learn the skill of marketing from?
Marketing, I've learned from school. I got my master's in marketing research about 15 years ago.
Was that fun as much as the podcast is?
I think the podcast is more fun.
I thought so. Yeah, it's pretty intriguing the way you guys put that together. And what was intriguing is, I don't know if you created it for this or if it's because you guys have knitted that much, right? Well, let me not say guys, you gals, right? But
Right.
it's intriguing. Like I was doing something and it was so easy listening while I was doing something. Like it didn't take
Oh,
my thoughts away too much. Do you get that a lot from your listeners?
yeah, we have a lot of listeners who listen while they're knitting, which makes sense. But I think that's what the benefit of podcasting in general is. I do a lot of things while I'm listening to other podcasts, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, most definitely. I totally agree. But your podcast, I'm telling you, it carries a tone. Like it's your speaking, and if someone else speaks, so then I could turn around. But sometimes I'm listening to a podcast and someone else speaks in the room, and I'm like, can't you hear? I'm listening to a podcast with my earbuds, But it definitely has a really nice tone. I definitely appreciate that. Definitely, there are the challenges that go with this job. Why will you continue?
I'm just really enjoying podcasting as far as like being a storyteller. A lot of our episodes, I do interviews with people who may or may not be connected to the knitting industry, and am trying to find a connection to knitting. Like I've interviewed a psychologist, I've interviewed a bird expert, I've interviewed people who are kind of loosely related, but somehow can be tied back to our hobby and for some people profession.
Yeah. So on the podcast, I have conversations, and at one point, I attempt to connect things. I'm guessing with your skill that you've mastered, which is knitting, because of the time you've put in, do you see connections in everything?
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. Like, as in my career as a marketing researcher, is to take little bits of data and put it together and tell a story with it and make it interesting and hopefully have some impact on, the product or the client. But it also connects back to my knitting, where I just like to see connections, and I like to make connections just with people too.
Yeah. And I could go a bit more further with this because I love it. There's so many different types of links, right? Even with knitting,
Right.
there are different types of links that you can create. Some take time, and some are even strong. Some are stronger. Some you could just pull apart, unravel, right?
Right.
I love it.
I love it. And you can make a loop and it can be a looser connection, but it creates like a beautiful lace structure,
There we
or you
go.
can make something tight together to make it stronger.
There we go. Right.
I love
So
it.
we're definitely on the same page here. It's just
Yeah.
testing. Tell me one other thing that you've done consistently over the last 3 years, please.
Well, I've been knitting consistently. I try to do a little bit, even if I'm busy. I try to get in a little bit almost every day. At the end of the night, it's kind of my way to unwind at the end of the day.
How does it make you feel?
It can be relaxing. It can be challenging. I think it's just so cool to take something. I just was thinking recently, I have this yarn that somebody made by hand in Ireland. And I'm like, this used to be a sheep. This used to be sheep's hair. And now he took it and he spun it into yarn. And now I've carried it across back to the US and I'm knitting it and it's going to be a sweater. And I just think that's so magical in some way.
Yeah.
And I love the history of it. There's a little bit of math involved. I just think there's a lot to it.
Yeah, there is. I know one of you was speaking of dyes, right? Like it was you, right? That were going to dye, like, and she was telling you about the natural dye, right? That you could use. Are you doing video? Are you all doing video with what you're doing?
So Staci, the host, I call myself the co-host. She has a YouTube channel, and really our audience came from her audience on YouTube, and she does instructional videos.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, cool. All right, what would you suggest to someone out there that's listening who may be stressed, who may be over the edge sometimes, why they should even consider doing what you've done with knitting?
Well, there's all kinds of research to show that knitting is very meditative. It's very good for your soul, especially if you're going through grief or addiction, or you just need something because it relaxes your mind. It can be frustrating in the beginning, but once you get the rhythm of it, it's very much like any kind of meditative state.
Amazing audience. Well, we are live with Casey Bernard. You can definitely check her out. As she said, she is the co-host of VeryPink. So it's VeryPink Knits and Casey Knits, right? But you could definitely connect to them at verypink.com, right?
Correct.
Casey Bernard, let's switch gears for a moment now and let me invite you into my time machine that is surrounded with beautiful, warm, blue Caribbean water.
Ooh.
Casey, what is your earliest childhood memory?
I have to think my most vivid memory is I was probably like 3. And I was at my grandma's house and I was with my mom, and I remember her uncle came in the room and he was really tall, like almost 7 feet tall.
Wow.
And I was afraid of him. I thought he was a giant. And so I just remember hiding behind my mom, and but they were laughing. And I I think it's a vivid memory because I was confused. Like I was scared, but they were laughing. So,
So you're 3 years old. Why do you think this memory, of all your memories, sticks out so clearly?
I think, like I said, I was confused. Just, he was very nice and he was laughing. And I think it was kind of my earliest sense of, I kind of felt bad that I was scared of him. Just, feeling bad that I thought maybe I was making him feel bad. But yeah, I don't know.
Intriguing. Hey, well, can I offer an interpretation to the thought picture you created in my mind?
Sure.
I love the emotion of confusion and what it represents. I've always been intrigued by words like, for example, explosive. Explosive is not a bad word, but because of the branding that it has gotten, it's now a bad word. But truly, it's great to be explosive in your artistic ways, right?
Right.
And that being said, the confusion that you experienced, it was like twofold, where it could be you are happy or not. And to see the confusion translate into something like knitting, that someone could be confused to the point that they cry and hide and stop doing it, or actually embrace it, is fascinating to me. That it connects, that from confusion, that mode of confusion, you grow and you learn and you move forward.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah. If we fast forward to when you were 12 years old, what was your favorite song?
Well, I had to look it up, and I'm pretty sure it was Wham! I'm Your Man.
Yeah, that's cool.
that goes back to confusion, because I was confused by George Michael.
Yeah, well, you're connecting the dots here. Love it. I love it. Well, Casey, we have arrived at our destination. But before we get off of this time machine, there's a small declaration form. So it's yes or no, possibly a bit more. We're going to go pretty quickly here. Are you ready, Casey?
Sure.
Casey, have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
Yes, I have.
Are you married?
Yes.
Do you have children?
I do. I have 2 boys.
All right. Do you believe in God?
It's complicated.
Do you have an inner circle of friends?
Yes.
Do you watch TV for more than 3 hours a day?
No.
How about 3 hours a week?
Yes.
What about screen time, the phone and the computer? Is it more than 8 or less than 8 hours a day?
Probably close to 8.
All right. Casey, after 1,001 conversations in 3 months, I came up with a workbook. And this was in 2016. So the workbook name is your own unique real self. It's yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is, as you answered the questions, you uncover your mission, if you would, your own unique real statement. I'd like to know if you had to share with us your own unique real statement, a statement that represents who you are, Casey Bernard. What would you say that is?
Be curious.
Love it.
Ask a lot of questions.
Love it. Yeah, be curious. Ask a lot of questions. And I'll add, even if there is confusion.
Exactly.
Right. Casey Bernard, this was a great pleasure. Before you leave, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
No, I just love what you're doing here. This is great.
Hey, thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure. Casey Bernard, thank you for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. Stay tuned for more from our advertisers.
Diabetes is a mountain pandemic. It's a disease that's not acute but chronic. Similar to this rhyming method, I have simplified the definition, the signs and symptoms, and the complications of diabetes for both adults and children in my books, Poems for Patients, A Focus on Diabetes, and The ABCs of Diabetes for Children. These books are available on Amazon.com, and for more information, you can visit my website, poemsbyaj.com. That's poemsbyaj.com.